The notification lit up my phone before I had even unlocked the door to my new apartment. It was a photo of my suitcases, captioned with a single, brutal sentence. Finally, the freeloader is gone. Beneath it, neighbors and cousins were already celebrating her liberation. They had no idea that for 2 years. My invisible money had kept her lights on. I looked at the stack of receipts in my hand and realized that silence was no longer an option. There is a specific kind of shame reserved for the adult woman who has to move back into her childhood bedroom, or in my case, the guest bedroom of her older sister's suburban colonial in Briar Glen. It is a shame that tastes like lukewarm tap water and feels like wearing shoes that are half a size too small. You can walk, you can function, but you are never, not for a single second, unaware of the pinch. I was 31 when the floor fell out. It was a classic American 1-2 punch, a corporate downsizing that dissolved my marketing department into thin air, followed 3 weeks later by a medical emergency that my catastrophic insurance plan barely touched. I had savings, but they were the kind of savings meant to fix a transmission, not to survive 6 months of unemployment and a 5-figure hospital bill. I burned through my rainy day fund in 90 days. Then I burned through my dignity when my older sister, Angela, offered me her spare room. I cried with gratitude. I sat at her granite kitchen island, my hands shaking around a mug of tea, and promised her it would be temporary. I promised her I would not be a burden. Angela had smiled then, that tight, benevolent smile she uses when she is feeling particularly saintly. She touched my arm and told me that family helps family. She told me that I could stay as long as I needed to get back on my feet. She told me not to worry about rent until I found a job. 2 years later, I was still there, and the word burden had been etched into the drywall of that house, invisible to everyone but me. The narrative Angela built around my presence was subtle at first. It started with the little sighs she would release when she came home from her job as an office manager at a logistics firm. She would drop her keys on the counter, look at me sitting at the dining table with my laptop open to a job board, and ask if I had had a productive day in a tone that suggested she knew I hadn't. We never signed a lease. We never wrote down a formal agreement. That was my first mistake. The arrangement was built on the shifting sands of her mood and my guilt. The house rules were simple. I was the guest, so I had to be invisible, but I was also the roommate, so I had to be useful. I found temp work within the first month. It wasn't my career, but it was money. I spent my days filing papers at a dental office or doing data entry for a warehouse 2 towns over. The pay was erratic, but it was something, and the moment that first direct deposit hit my account, the dynamic in the house shifted. It wasn't that Angela asked for rent. She was too clever for that. If she asked for rent, I would be a tenant, and tenants have rights. Tenants have boundaries. Instead, she asked for help. Can you pick up groceries on your way home? She would text me at 4 p.m. I would say yes. I would buy the organic milk she liked, the expensive cheese, the specific brand of coffee pods. When I came home, she would be on the couch, exhausted. She would say, "Just let me know what I owe you," and I would tell her the total. She would wave a hand and say, "I will Venmo you later." Later never came. If I brought it up, the temperature in the room would drop. "Oh," she would say, her voice tight, "I thought since you aren't paying for the mortgage or the electric bill, you wouldn't mind picking up a few things for the house. It must be nice to have no real bills." Eliza. The shame would flare up, hot and immediate. She was right. I would tell myself I wasn't paying the mortgage, so I would swallow the cost of the groceries. $100 here, $200 there. Then it became the utilities. "The electric bill is insane this month," she said one evening, sliding the envelope across the counter toward me. "I think it is because you are here all day when you aren't working." I wasn't home all day. I was at the library, or at temp jobs, or walking her golden retriever, Buster, because she was too tired to do it. But I picked up the envelope. I paid the bill. 6 months in, I started keeping a spreadsheet. It was a secret rebellion. I password protected the file on my laptop. I logged every grocery run, every utility bill I paid in full, every tank of gas I put in her car when I borrowed it to run her errands. I logged the cost of the takeout she insisted we order but forgot to pay me back for. I logged the hours of labor, too, though I didn't assign a dollar value to those: the lawn mowing, the vacuuming, the laundry, the hours spent listening to her complain about her ex-husband or her boss. I did this not because I planned to invoice her, but because I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. I needed to see the numbers in black and white to silence the voice in my head, Angela's voice, that told me I was a leech. According to my spreadsheet, by the end of the first year, I was contributing an average of $1,200 a month to the household. It wasn't market rate for a one-bedroom apartment in Briar Glen, but it certainly wasn't freeloading. But facts did not matter in Angela's house. Only the story mattered. The story was best performed in front of an audience. We had a dinner party about 18 months into my stay. Our Aunt Linda and Uncle Mike came over, along with a couple of neighbors Angela had been trying to impress. I spent 2 days prepping the house. I scrubbed the baseboards. I slow-cooked a pot roast. I set the table with the good linen napkins. When the guests arrived, I shrank. This was my role, the silent prop. Angela held court at the head of the table, pouring wine with a heavy hand. She looked radiant, the martyr saint of Briar Glen. "It has been a lot," she said, gesturing vaguely in my direction with her wine glass. "Having Eliza here, but what do you do? She is family. I just want her to have a safe place to land." Aunt Linda looked at me with pitying eyes. "It is so good of you, Angela," she said. "Most people wouldn't be able to make that sacrifice." I stared at my pot roast. I wanted to say, "I paid for this meat. I paid for the wine you are drinking. I paid the internet bill so Angela could stream her shows last night." But I didn't. I smiled the weak smile of the defeated. "So, any leads on a permanent job? Eliza?" Uncle Mike asked, his mouth full. "I'm working a temp contract right now at the insurance agency." I said, "And I have an interview next week for a marketing lead at a tech firm in the city." Angela laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound. "Oh, Eliza is always interviewing," she said. "She is very picky. I tell her she can't be too choosy in this economy, especially when she has no overhead expenses. But you know how millennials are." The table chuckled. The narrative was set. I was the picky, entitled younger sister, and Angela was the benevolent provider carrying the weight of my laziness. I excused myself to clear the plates. In the kitchen, I gripped the edge of the sink so hard my knuckles turned white. I could hear them talking in the dining room. "I don't know what I would do without you." "Angela," a neighbor said, "you are a saint. It is tough love." Angela sighed. "I just hope she launches soon. I am ready to have my house back." I looked at the spreadsheet in my mind. I visualized the rows and columns. I took a deep breath. I was saving money. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, I was rebuilding my credit score, which had taken a hit during the medical debt crisis. I was seeing a therapist on a sliding scale who told me that I was dealing with a narcissist. A word I felt guilty even thinking. I just had to hold on. The first crack in the facade appeared on a Tuesday. I was the one who checked the mail. It was one of my unwritten duties. Usually, I sorted it into piles on the entryway table. Bills, junk, personal. Angela usually ignored the bills until the pink slip stage, at which point she would dramatically sigh and ask if I could cover it just until payday. That Tuesday, there was an envelope tucked under a catalog. It was addressed to Angela, but it wasn't from a utility company or a standard bank. The return address was for a lender I didn't recognize, something generic, like Apex Financial Services. It looked thin and urgent. The words "Final Notice" were stamped in red near the barcode window. I frowned. Angela made good money. She constantly complained about how expensive I was, implying that my presence was the drain on her finances, but I bought my own food. I paid the utilities. Why was she getting final notices from secondary lenders? The front door opened. Angela breezed in, bringing a gust of cold autumn air with her. "Hey," I said, holding up the envelope. "This looks important." "I think it is." She was across the room in 2 strides. She snatched the envelope from my hand with a speed that startled me. "Give me that," she snapped. I recoiled. "Whoa, I just saw it was a final notice. Is everything okay?" She shoved the envelope into her purse, her face flushing a deep, blotchy red. "It is nothing," she said, her voice pitching too high. "Just a mistake. Spam mail. You know how they try to trick you into opening things. It didn't look like spam," I said slowly. "Drop it. Eliza," she said. The venom in her voice was sudden and sharp. "Stop snooping through my mail. God, do you have to be in everyone's business just because you have nothing going on in your own life?" She stormed into her bedroom and slammed the door. I stood in the hallway, the insult stinging my skin. But beneath the hurt, a cold knot of suspicion began to tighten in my stomach. I knew spam mail. That envelope had the heavy, textured feel of consequence. That night, I opened my laptop and looked at my spreadsheet again. I looked at the dates I had given her money for the shared expenses. I wondered, for the first time, where that money had actually gone. 2 months later, I got the lease. It was a studio apartment above a bakery in the bad part of town. The rent was high for what it was. The carpet was suspicious, and the radiator clanked like a dying engine. But it was mine. I had scraped together the first month, last month, and security deposit by working double shifts at the warehouse and selling half my wardrobe to a consignment shop. I waited until dinner to tell her. We were eating spaghetti, sauce and noodles I had paid for, and the TV was on. "I have some news," I said. Angela didn't look up from her phone. "You finally got a real job?" "Better," I said. "I found an apartment. I am moving out on the 1st. Her thumb stopped hovering over the screen. She looked up. Her expression wasn't relief. It wasn't happiness. It was a flash of pure, unadulterated panic, followed instantly by irritation. "You are moving?" she said. "Where?" "North side," I said. "Above the bakery on 4th. "That dump?" She scoffed. "Eliza, are you serious? You are going to leave this house to live in a rat trap?" "It is what I can afford," I said, keeping my voice steady, "and I thought you wanted your house back." "You said at dinner last month, I didn't mean you should run off to a slum," she interrupted. She set her phone down hard. "So that is it? You just leave? After everything I have done for you?" I blinked. "Angela, I have been here 2 years. You have been telling everyone I am a freeloader. I am doing exactly what you wanted." She crossed her arms. "Well, who is going to walk Buster? Who is going to be here when the cable guy comes? You know I can't take off work. I am not your assistant." "Angela," I said, "I am your sister, and I am moving out." She didn't speak to me for the rest of the week. She slammed cupboards. She turned the TV up loud when I was trying to pack. When I asked if she had any boxes I could use, she told me to go check the dumpster behind the liquor store if I liked living in trash so much. Move-out day was a Saturday. It was raining again, a gray drizzle that matched the feeling in my chest. I had recruited a friend from my temp job, a quiet guy named Marcus, to help me load the few pieces of furniture I had acquired. We worked in silence. Angela was in her bedroom with the door closed. I could hear the murmur of her voice on the phone. I was taping up the last box, books and the heavy folder containing my financial records, when I walked past her door to get to the bathroom. Her voice carried through the wood, loud and theatrical. "I know," she was saying. "I know. It is heartbreaking. Really, I finally had to put my foot down. I told her, 'Eliza, you cannot live off me forever. I am forcing her to be independent. It is the hardest thing I have ever had to do. But sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind.'" I froze. My hand hovered over the doorknob. She paused, listening to the person on the other end. Then she laughed. "Exactly." She threw a fit. "Of course. Ungrateful? You have no idea. After 2 years of a free ride. I thought about the $3,000 I had transferred to her for the roof repair last winter. I thought about the utilities. I thought about the groceries. I wanted to kick the door open. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drag her out to the kitchen table and force her to look at my spreadsheet. But I didn't. I was 33 years old. and I was tired. I just wanted out. I wanted to be in a room where the air didn't smell like obligation. I walked away. I finished packing. I loaded the last box into Marcus's truck. I left my key on the kitchen counter. I didn't write a note. The drive to the new apartment took 20 minutes. When I walked into the studio, it smelled like yeast and old dust. It was beautiful. I sat down on the floor, leaning my back against the wall, and closed my eyes. Silence. Glorious silence. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Then again. A rapid-fire sequence of vibrations that made my heart jump. I pulled it out. It wasn't a text. It was a Facebook notification. And then another. And another. Angela Perry tagged you in a post. Aunt Linda commented on a post you are tagged in. Mrs. Higgins reacted. Love. My stomach turned over. I opened the app. There, at the top of my feed, was a photo. It was a picture of my boxes stacked by the front door. I hadn't seen her take it. It was a high-angle shot, making the pile look messy and chaotic, like refuse waiting for the garbage truck. The caption was short. Finally, the freeloader is gone. I stared at the words. The screen blurred. I scrolled down. The comments were already rolling in. Aunt Linda. So proud of you for setting boundaries. Honey, you did more than enough. Mrs. Higgins, the neighbor. About time. You have the patience of a saint. Angela. Tough love is what she needs. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Maybe she will finally grow up. You are a good sister. A co-worker from Angela's office. Cheers to getting your house back. I felt physically ill. The room spun. It wasn't just the lie. It was the public execution. She hadn't just kicked me out. She was burning the bridge and salting the earth so I could never come back. She was shaping the narrative of my life for everyone in our hometown, for our family, for people I went to high school with. She was branding me, freeloader. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, a mix of rage and panic. I wanted to comment. I wanted to type in all caps. I paid the electric bill for 2 years. I wanted to post the spreadsheet. I wanted to burn her down. But I looked at the comments again. They were already on her side. If I argued, I would just look defensive. I would look like the crazy, ungrateful sister she had already painted me to be. I took a breath. I took a screenshot of the post. Then I took screenshots of the comments. I saved them to a folder on my phone. I went to my settings and turned off notifications. Then I opened my text messages. I typed one sentence to Angela. Please take the photo down. I watched the 3 dots dance on the screen. She was typing. She was ready for this. She wanted the fight. The reply came through a moment later. A single emoji. The face laughing with tears. And then, if the shoe fits? I stared at the phone until the screen went black. I put the phone on the floor. I pulled my knees up to my chest and wrapped my arms around them. The silence of the apartment didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt heavy. I looked around at my boxes, my life, packed into cardboard. I realized then that this wasn't over. Angela didn't just want me gone. She wanted to win. She needed to be the victim, which meant I had to be the villain. She had just declared war, and she thought she had already won because she had the microphone. But she didn't know about the spreadsheet. She didn't know I had kept the receipts. She didn't know that the freeloader she had just mocked was the only reason her financial house of cards was still standing. I wasn't going to fight her in the comments section. I wasn't going to give her the drama she craved. I was going to wait. I sat on the floor of my empty apartment, hurt and humiliated. But for the first time in 2 years, my mind was crystal clear. If the shoe fits, she had said. I looked at my boots. They were old, scuffed, and worn down from walking miles to save bus fare. They were the shoes of someone who paid her own way. I would make her eat those words. But not today. Today, I would unpack. Tomorrow, I would start building my case. The fallout from a digital explosion is silent at first. There is no bang, no smoke. Just the quiet hum of a server farm somewhere in a desert, and the soft blue light of 1,000 screens lighting up in living rooms across Briar Glen. I thought the post would die a natural death. I thought the algorithm would chew it up and spit it out, burying my humiliation under cat videos and political arguments within 24 hours. I was wrong. By Tuesday morning, the post had breached the containment of Angela's immediate friend circle. Someone, I never found out who, had shared it into the Briar Glen Community Connect group. This was a forum usually reserved for complaints about trash pickup, lost dogs, and suspicious vans driving too slowly past the elementary school. But that morning, the hot topic was me. Finally, the freeloader is gone. The caption had become a headline. People who didn't know me, people who had never stepped foot in Angela's house, felt comfortable weighing in on my character. They projected their own frustrations onto the image of my suitcases. I became the avatar for every lazy cousin, every adult child who refused to launch, every financial parasite they had ever encountered. Good for you. Angela, a woman named Brenda commented. My brother stayed on my couch for 6 months and never bought a roll of toilet paper. Taking out the trash is the only way they learn. Tough love is the best love, a local realtor added. If she can afford those suitcases, she can afford rent. I sat at my desk at the insurance agency, my face burning. I kept my head down, focusing intently on the claims adjustment software on my screen. I told myself that my coworkers weren't in that group. I told myself that my professional life was separate from the suburban melodrama of Briar Glen. Then lunch happened. I went to the break room to heat up my Tupperware container of pasta. 3 of my colleagues were already there, sitting at the round laminate table. The conversation stopped the moment I walked in. It wasn't a gradual taper. It was a hard, sudden silence that sucked the air out of the room. Hey, guys, I said, forcing a smile. Hey, Eliza, Sarah said. She looked at her salad. I put my food in the microwave and punched the buttons. The hum of the machine felt deafening. Behind me, I heard a chair scrape. So, Kevin said. His voice had that forced casualness people use when they are about to say something awful. We were thinking about ordering Thai food on Friday for everyone. That sounds fun, I said, watching the turntable spin. Yeah, well, Kevin chuckled. Just wanted to make sure you were good for it. You know, I don't want to be the one asking you to spot lunch if things are tight. The microwave beeped. I opened the door, the steam hitting my face. Excuse me? I asked, turning around. Kevin held up his hands in a mock surrender. I'm just joking. Eliza, relax. I just saw that post your sister made. It looked pretty intense. Freeloader is gone and all that. Just messing with you. He looked at the others for validation. Sarah offered a tight, nervous smile. It is not what it looks like, I said. My voice sounded thin. Hey, no judgment, Kevin said, taking a bite of his sandwich. Family stuff is crazy. But seriously, $10 for Thai on Friday if you're in. I took my pasta back to my desk and ate it while staring at a spreadsheet, trying not to cry. The label had stuck. In their eyes, I wasn't the quiet, diligent worker who stayed late to finish reports. I was the leech. I was the woman who had to be forced out of her sister's house because she wouldn't pay her way. That afternoon, my mother called. My mother lived 3 states away in Florida. She usually only called on Sundays. Seeing her name on the caller ID on a Tuesday afternoon made my stomach drop. For a brief, naive second, I thought she was calling to defend me. I thought she had seen the post and was calling to rage against Angela's cruelty. I answered in the stairwell of the office building. Mom? Eliza. She said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. It was the voice of a woman who had just been told that her child had been caught shoplifting. Did you see it? I asked. I saw it, she said. Aunt Linda sent it to me, and then your cousin Beth called. Eliza, I have to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Okay, I said. Is it true? The question hung in the concrete stairwell, echoing slightly. Is what true? I asked, though I knew. Did you refuse to leave? She asked. Did Angela have to kick you out? She says she has been carrying you for 2 years. Eliza, she says you haven't paid a dime toward the household and that she is drowning in debt because of it. I gripped the railing. Mom, That is a lie. I paid for groceries. I paid the utilities. I gave her thousands of dollars. My mother sighed. It was a long, heavy exhale. Eliza, honey, I know it is hard to find work right now, and I know you have had a rough time with your health. But Angela has always been the responsible one. She has the house. She has the steady job. Why would she lie about this? Why would she post that picture if it wasn't true? Because she is mean, I suggested, my voice rising. Because she likes the attention? Eliza, stop, my mother said sharply. Don't speak about your sister that way. She took you in when you had nowhere to go. If you messed up, just own it. Apologize to her. Don't make this a family war. Everyone is talking about it. It is embarrassing. I realized then that the trial was over. The verdict had been delivered, and I hadn't even been present for the defense. Angela's narrative, simple, loud, and visual, had become the default reality. My truth, complex, quiet, and documented in a private spreadsheet, didn't stand a chance. I have to go. Mom, I said, I have to get back to work. I hung up before she could say anything else about responsibility. That night, in the silence of my new apartment, I opened the laptop. I didn't open Netflix. I didn't open a book. I opened the spreadsheet. If they wanted to call me a freeloader, I needed to know exactly how much that title had cost me. I needed to perform a forensic audit of my own life. I pulled up my bank statements from the last 24 months. I pulled up my Venmo history. I pulled up the text threads where Angela had asked for favors. I started a new tab in the spreadsheet titled Total Contributions. Row 1, Groceries. I filtered my bank statement for the 3 local supermarkets. The total for 2 years was staggering. $5,430. I did the math. That was over $200 a week. I remembered the carts full of premium items Angela insisted on. The specific wines, the deli meats, the expensive organic snacks. Row 2, Utilities. I went through my Venmo history. Electric bill, January. Water bill, February. Internet upgrade. The total was $3,200. Row 3, Cash transfers. These were the vague ones. The texts where she said, "Can you spot me $50 until Friday?" Or "I am short on the car payment. Can you help?" I cross-referenced the texts with the Zelle transfers. Another $1,800. Row 4, Household goods, Target runs, detergent, dog food for Buster, paper towels, cleaning supplies. I worked for 4 hours. My eyes burned. The final number at the bottom of the column made me gasp. Over the course of 2 years, I had contributed nearly $12,000 to Angela's household. That was $500 a month. It wasn't market rent. No, but it wasn't zero. And considering I was sleeping in a spare room, doing all the cleaning, providing free dog care, and cooking 4 nights a week, it was a significant subsidy. But as I scrutinized the utility payments, something caught my eye. I had been paying the electric bill directly through the provider's portal for the last 6 months because Angela claimed she lost the login and asked me to just handle it. I logged into the electric company's website now to download the PDFs for my records. I looked at the usage graphs. The bill was high, consistently high, $300, sometimes $400 a month. Angela had a 3-bedroom house, and it was just the 2 of us. We were energy conscious. We didn't leave lights on. I looked closer at the bill details. There were 2 service charges listed under the address. Meter A, main residential. Meter B, detached accessory. I frowned. Detached accessory? Angela had a converted garage in the backyard. It was a finished studio space, but she used it for storage, or at least, she told me she used it for storage. She kept it locked. She said it was full of her ex-husband's old junk that she was legally required to hold on to. I looked at the usage for meter B. It wasn't zero. It was consistent. A steady hum of electricity, day and night. I checked the dates. The usage on meter B had spiked 18 months ago, right around the time Angela told me the electric rates had gone up and asked me to start covering the full bill. I sat back in my chair. I had been paying the electricity for a building I wasn't allowed to enter. I needed to talk to her, not over text, not in the comments section, face to face. I drove to Briar Glen on Saturday morning. I didn't call ahead. I knew she would be home. She always spent Saturday mornings recovering from the work week. When I pulled into the driveway, I felt a phantom limb sensation. I used to live here. This was my home. Now, it looked like a fortress I was besieging. I rang the bell. Angela opened the door wearing her silk robe and holding a coffee mug. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed, but she didn't look surprised. She looked ready. "Here to pick up the rest of your trash?" she asked. I found a box of old magazines under the bed. "I need to talk to you." "Angela," I said, "can I come in?" She sighed, a dramatic heave of her shoulders. "Fine, but make it quick. I have plans." I walked into the kitchen. It smelled the same. Vanilla candles and coffee. It was disorienting. I stood by the granite island, the same place where she had promised me shelter 2 years ago. "You need to take the post down," I said. She laughed. It was a sharp, barking sound. "Oh my God, are you still on that?" "Eliza, get over it. It is Facebook. Nobody cares. Everyone cares." "Angela," I said, "people at work are making jokes. Mom called me asking if I am a thief. You are destroying my reputation. You destroyed your own reputation when you decided to be a burden for 2 years." She shot back. She set her mug down hard. "You should be thanking me. I gave you a roof over your head. I fed you. And now you're crying because I made a joke about it?" "It wasn't a joke," I said, "and I wasn't a burden." "Angela, I ran the numbers. I paid you $12,000 over the last 2 years. She waved her hand dismissively. "That is nothing. Do you know what a mortgage costs? Do you know what property taxes are? You were living in Briar Glen for pennies. You owe me." "I owe you?" I asked. "I paid the electric bill." "Angela, including the bill for the garage." Her eyes flickered. Just for a microsecond. The arrogance slipped. Her gaze darted to the side, then snapped back to me, harder than before. "So?" she said. "It is part of the property. You lived on the property. You told me the garage was storage." I said, "Storage doesn't use 300 kilowatt hours a month. What is in there?" "Angela?" She took a step closer to me. She was taller than me, and she used it. "You are ungrateful," she hissed. "You are a paranoid, ungrateful little brat. I take you in when you are at rock bottom, and this is how you repay me? By auditing my electric bill? By coming into my house and accusing me of things? Take the post down." I repeated. "No," she said. "I am not taking it down. In fact, I might pin it to the top of my profile. You need to learn a lesson. Eliza, humiliation builds character. Maybe next time you won't be such a leech. Now get out of my house before I call the police and tell them you are trespassing." I looked at her, really looked at her. She was shaking. It wasn't rage. Her hand, the one gripping the counter, was vibrating. Her phone, sitting on the counter between us, buzzed. She snatched it up instantly, her eyes darting to the screen. She typed a furious reply. Her thumbs moving in a blur. It buzzed again. She flinched. She wasn't just being mean. She was scared. "Who are you texting?" I asked quietly. "None of your business," she shouted. "Get out." I walked to the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently. As I walked to my car, I looked back at the house. The garage was set back, detached from the main structure. It had no windows on the side facing the driveway. I saw a thick power cable running from the main breaker box toward it. Angela was hiding something, and she was using the noise of my freeloading to keep everyone looking at me, so they wouldn't look at her. The following week, I took a half-day off work and drove to North Alder, the next city over. I had an appointment with a credit counselor at a nonprofit financial aid center. I didn't want to go to anyone in Briar Glen. The town was too small, and the gossip was too fresh. The counselor was a woman named Mrs. Davila. She had kind eyes and a desk cluttered with pamphlets about debt consolidation. I laid it all out. The spreadsheet, the screenshots of the post, the bank statements, the utility bills. "I feel like I'm going crazy." I told her, My sister says I am a financial drain. But the math says I was a contributor. Am I missing something? Mrs. Davila put on her reading glasses and went through the documents. She worked in silence for 10 minutes. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Finally, she looked up. "Eliza," she said, "you are not crazy. You are paying a significant portion of the household expenses. In a roommate situation, this would be considered a fair contribution. In a family situation, it is generous." She tapped the paper with the utility graph. "And this," she said, "this meter usage on the detached structure. This is highly irregular. If she is claiming this is storage, she is lying. This usage pattern looks like, well, it looks like mining, or grow lights, or someone living there. But that is not my area of expertise." She took off her glasses. "What I can tell you is this. Scapegoating is a very common dynamic in families with financial instability. Often, the person shouting the loudest about money is the one who has the most to hide. By painting you as the cause of her financial stress, your sister absolves herself of accountability. If she is broke, it is your fault. If she is in debt, it is your fault. It is a camouflage technique." "Camouflage," I repeated. "I want you to be very careful." Mrs. Davila said, "If she is unstable enough to humiliate you publicly to cover her tracks, she might be unstable enough to do other things. Have you run a full credit report recently?" I checked my score on the banking app. I said, "It seemed okay. It is rebuilding." "No," Mrs. Davila said, "not the app. The full report, the one that shows every inquiry, every open account, every address history. You need to see exactly what is attached to your Social Security number." She printed out a form. "Go home. Go to the official annual credit report site. Download all 3 bureaus. Read them line by line." I drove home with a knot in my stomach. When I got to my apartment building, I checked my mailbox. It was usually empty, but today there was a white envelope. It had a yellow forwarding sticker on it. It had been sent to Angela's address, then forwarded to me by the post office because I had set up mail forwarding the day I moved out. It was from a collection agency, Midland Credit Recovery. I stood in the hallway, staring at the envelope. I had medical debt. Yes, but I had payment plans for all of it. I was current. I was meticulous. I tore it open. "Dear Eliza Perry, this is an attempt to collect a debt. Regarding your account with Omni Wireless." Omni Wireless. I didn't have Omni Wireless. I had never had Omni Wireless. The amount due was $780. The service address listed was Angela's house. My hands started to shake. I ran up the stairs to my apartment. I threw my bag on the floor and opened my laptop. I didn't even take off my coat. I went to the credit report site Mrs. Davila had told me about. I typed in my Social Security number. I answered the security questions. Which of the following addresses have you lived at? Which of the following car loans is yours? The report generated. It was 40 pages long. I scrolled past my student loans, past my old car loan, past the medical bills I knew about, and then I stopped. Under the section titled Inquiries, there was a list of companies that had checked my credit in the last 2 years. First Regional Bank. Auto Loan Inquiry. Dated 4 months ago. Quick Cash Lenders. Personal Loan Inquiry. Dated 6 months ago. Omni Wireless. New Service Inquiry. Dated 1 year ago. I hadn't applied for a car loan. I drove a 10-year-old Honda I had paid off years ago. I hadn't applied for a personal loan. I looked at the dates. They were all during the time I was living in Angela's guest room, the time when I trusted her, the time when my mail was sitting on the entryway table, where she could get to it before I did. I remembered the spam letter she had snatched from my hand, the one she said was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. I looked at the open accounts section. There it was, a credit card with First Regional Bank. Status, open, balance, $4,000. I sat back, the air leaving my lungs in a rush. The freeloader narrative wasn't just cruelty, it wasn't just a sister being mean, it was a strategy. If everyone thought I was a financial disaster, if everyone thought I was a leech who couldn't pay my bills, Then nobody would be surprised when debt collectors started calling. Nobody would question it if my credit was ruined. Nobody would believe me if I said, "I didn't do this." Angela had stolen my identity. She had been living off my credit while I was living in her spare room. And the moment I moved out, the moment I threatened to take my financial identity with me, she attacked. She tried to destroy my credibility so that when I found the fraud, I would already be the villain in the story. I looked at the screen, at the sterile list of numbers that represented a crime committed by my own flesh and blood. I felt the nausea rise, hot and acidic, but beneath the nausea, there was something else, a cold, hard clarity. She thought I was weak. She thought I was the silent prop. She thought I would cry and beg for forgiveness. She had no idea what she had just started. Clicking the dispute button on a credit report website shouldn't feel like pulling the trigger of a gun, but that is exactly what it felt like. I sat in my dimly lit apartment, the glow of the laptop screen painting my face in spectral blue, and stared at the unauthorized inquiry from First Regional Bank. If I clicked that button, I was officially telling the federal government and the banking system that I did not open that account. By logical extension, since the account was opened from my sister's IP address, using mail sent to my sister's house, I was accusing Angela of fraud. My finger hovered over the trackpad. The nausea was a physical weight in my gut. We are conditioned from birth to protect our family. The mantra "blood is thicker than water" had been drilled into me since I was a child, usually by Angela herself whenever she needed me to cover for her. Reporting a stranger is easy. Reporting the person who taught you how to tie your shoes, who sat next to you at your father's funeral, who made you soup when you had the flu, that feels like an amputation. But I looked at the number on the screen. $4,000. It wasn't just the money. It was the calculated nature of it. She hadn't just borrowed a credit card in an emergency. She had opened a new one in my name, hidden the statements, and spent 2 years quietly maxing it out while simultaneously telling everyone I was a financial burden. I took a breath that shuddered in my chest. I clicked dispute. Then I set up the fraud alerts. One by one, I locked down my identity with the 3 major bureaus: Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. With each confirmation screen, the nausea subsided slightly, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't attacking her. I was shielding myself. If she ran into the shield and hurt herself, that was her momentum, not mine. I closed the laptop and rubbed my eyes. The silence in the apartment was absolute. I was alone. Then my phone chimed. I flinched. I had conditioned myself to dread that sound. Since the freeloader post, every notification had been a fresh insult or a demand for an explanation from a confused relative. I picked up the phone, ready to delete whatever toxicity had just arrived. It was a direct message on Instagram. It wasn't from a family member. It was from Mrs. Gable. Mrs. Gable lived 3 houses down from Angela. She was a retired schoolteacher who spent her days gardening and observing the neighborhood with the precision of a surveillance drone. She had always been kind to me, often waving when I walked Buster or bringing over extra zucchini in the summer. Dear Eliza, the message read, "I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I saw the post your sister made on Facebook. I just wanted to say that this feels off to me. I saw you mowing that lawn every week in the summer. I saw you taking the trash bins out in the rain while her car was in the driveway. I know what I saw. If you ever need someone to confirm what you actually did around there, I will. Stay strong." I read the message 3 times. Tears pricked my eyes, not from sadness, but from the sudden, overwhelming relief of being seen. Angela's narrative relied on isolation. She needed everyone to believe her version of reality because if they looked too closely, the seams would show. Mrs. Gable had looked. Mrs. Gable had seen the truth. It was the first crack in the wall Angela had built around me. I typed back, my fingers trembling. "Thank you, Mrs. Gable. You have no idea how much that means to me." I put the phone down and walked to the window. I looked out at the streetlights of my new neighborhood. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't a freeloader. I was a prop. That realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. For 2 years, my role in Angela's life hadn't been sister. It had been prop. I was the visual aid she used to construct her own identity. She needed to be the long-suffering saint, the martyr who sacrificed everything for family. But a martyr needs a burden. A hero needs a damsel in distress. I was the distress. As long as I was there, looking slightly bedraggled and underemployed, she could garner sympathy. Poor Angela. She does so much. Angela is such a rock. My presence allowed her to deflect attention from her own instability. If she was broke, it was because she was supporting me. If she was stressed, it was because she was worrying about me. Now that I was gone, the prop was missing, the stage was empty, and she was scrambling to fill the void before the audience realized the play was a sham. I needed more proof. Mrs. Gable's witness account was good, but it was anecdotal. I needed hard data. I sat back down at the computer and opened my cloud backup. I had years of text messages saved. I had never deleted anything. A habit born of anxiety, but one that was now my greatest asset. I searched for keywords: sign, name, account. The search results populated a list of threads going back 18 months. There was a text from a Tuesday in November. Angela, hey, the HOA needs a signature for the parking permit renewal, but I am stuck at work. Can you just sign it? They are being annoying. I remembered that. I had signed it. I didn't even read it. I assumed it was for her car. There was another from a Friday afternoon. Angela, my credit card is acting weird and won't go through for the internet upgrade. Can we put it in your name just for today? I will switch it back next week. It is just so we can get the faster speed for your job hunting. My stomach twisted. I remembered that too. She had framed it as a favor to me. For your job hunting, I had felt grateful. I had given her my information, and she never switched it back. I wrote down the date of that text. Then I grabbed my purse. The internet provider, Linkstream, had a physical storefront in a strip mall near the highway. I walked in just as they were opening the next morning. I had called in sick to my new job, claiming a migraine. It wasn't a lie. The pressure behind my eyes was blinding. The store was empty except for a young man named Jason who looked bored behind the counter. Hi, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need to check on the details of an account. It is in my name. Name and address? Jason asked, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Eliza Perry. The service address is 424 Maplewood Drive, Briar Glen. He typed. He frowned. Okay, Ms. Perry, I see the account here. Status is active. Current balance is $240 past due. I gripped the counter. Past due? Yes, he said. The last payment was missed, and the one before that was partial. Can you tell me what the service plan includes? I asked. Jason squinted at the screen. You have the Gigabit Ultimate package. That includes the high-speed fiber, the premium sports tier, the movie channel bundle, and the home security integration, plus the equipment rental for 3 HD boxes and the mesh router system. I felt the blood drain from my face. I don't watch sports, I whispered. I don't even have a TV in my room. The monthly bill was $280. Jason, I said, when was this package upgraded? He checked the history. Looks like the initial account was basic internet. Then on October 12th of last year, the bundle was added. Then in December, the sports package. Then in March, the security system add-on. Who authorized these changes? I asked. He turned the screen toward me. It says the orders were placed online via the customer portal. The IP address logs show they originated from the service address. So, from the house. It was her. She had used my name to build a luxury entertainment package she couldn't afford, all while telling me to be careful with the thermostat to save money. Jason, I said, I moved out of that house 2 weeks ago. I did not authorize these upgrades. I want to cancel the service. He looked uncomfortable. Well, you are under contract for another year. The early termination fee is $400, plus the past due balance. I closed my eyes. $640 to sever a tie I didn't know existed. Do it. I said, cancel it. Send the final bill to my new address. I wrote down the new address on a sticky note. Jason typed it in. You will have to return the equipment. He added, the boxes and the router. Otherwise, that is another $500. I don't have the equipment. I said, it is at the house. Then you will need to get it, he said, or pay for it. I walked out of the store into the bright, harsh sunlight of the parking lot. I felt exposed. When I got back to my apartment, I checked the mail. The forwarded bundle had arrived again. I sorted through it with trembling hands. Capital 1. You're pre-approved. Discover. Eliza. Claim your offer. Chase. Exclusive invitation for Eliza Perry. These weren't just random junk mail. They were targeted. I opened the Capital 1 envelope. The offer code was personalized. It referenced a recent inquiry. Someone had been phishing. Someone had been filling out pre-qualification forms online using my name and the Briar Glen address, seeing which lenders would bite. The ones that sent letters were the ones that had soft-pinged my credit and liked what they saw. Angela hadn't just used my credit. She had been actively prospecting for more. I needed legal advice. I couldn't afford a private attorney, not with the debt I was uncovering. So I looked up legal aid clinics in the county. There was one in Larkhaven, about 40 minutes away. I drove there the next day during my lunch break. The clinic was housed in the basement of a community center. The waiting room smelled of stale coffee and anxiety. I sat on a plastic chair, clutching my folder of evidence, surrounded by people who looked as tired as I felt. When my name was called, I met with a paralegal named Sarah. She was young, sharp, and didn't waste time on sympathy. Identity theft involving family is the most common type we see, she said, flipping through my spreadsheet. And it is the hardest to prosecute, not because the law is vague, but because the victims rarely follow through. She laid out my options on the table, counting them off on her fingers. Option 1. You pay it, you accept the debt, close the accounts, and walk away. You save the relationship, but you lose the money and your credit score takes a hit for 7 years. I shook my head. I can't afford that, and I won't do it. Option 2. Sarah continued. You freeze everything. You send a formal demand letter to your sister requiring her to pay off the balances and close the accounts. If she agrees, you get it in writing. If she doesn't, you move to option 3. Option 3? You file a police report, Sarah said. You press charges for identity theft and fraud. You take that police report to the banks and the credit bureaus. That is the only way to get the debt removed from your name without paying it. The banks won't believe it wasn't you unless you are willing to criminalize the person who did it. I stared at her. A police report. That means arresting her? I asked. It means an investigation. Sarah said. It means she could face felony charges depending on the amount. It means court. It means the family will likely choose sides. She looked me in the eye. Eliza, she said softly, you are looking for a magic third door where you get your money back and nobody gets in trouble. That door doesn't exist. She committed a crime. The only question is whether you are willing to be the victim or the witness. I left the clinic with a template for a demand letter and a heavy stone in my chest. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time. I thought about Christmas mornings. I thought about the time Angela braided my hair for prom. I thought about the sister I thought I had. Then I thought about the freeloader post. I thought about the laughing emoji. If the shoe fits, she had burned me publicly to cover her tracks. She had already chosen her side. I drove home. I didn't send the letter yet. I wasn't ready to pull the pin on the grenade. I needed to try one last diplomatic approach. But Angela was ahead of me. She sensed the shift. Maybe the internet getting cut off that morning had tipped her off. I checked Facebook from a burner account I had created. My main one was still deactivated. Angela had posted a status update an hour ago. No photo this time, just text on a background of storm clouds. It is funny how you can do everything for someone. Give them a home, feed them, support them. And the minute you ask for a little respect, they try to rewrite history. Sad to learn that some people will bite the hand that fed them just to play the victim. Betrayal, family drama, truth, will out. The comments were immediate. Stay strong. Angela. Narcissists always turn it around on you. Hun, You know the truth. That is all that matters. She was poisoning the well. She was planting the seed that I was going to lie about her. She was framing any future claim I made, about the credit cards, about the bills, as me rewriting history out of spite. It was brilliant. It was evil. If I came forward now with my accusations, the audience was pre-primed to dismiss them. Oh, there she goes. Playing the victim just like Angela said she would. I felt a surge of panic. She was controlling the narrative in real time. I needed a neutral ground. I couldn't fight her on Facebook, and I couldn't fight her in her kitchen. I looked up community mediation services. There was a center in Briar Glen that offered dispute resolution for families. It was voluntary, confidential, and free. I called them. I spoke to a mediator named David. I want to request a session with my sister. I said, "It is regarding financial disagreements and property disputes." David took down the details. "We can reach out to her," he said, "but she has to agree to attend." "Please try." I said, "Tell her it is the alternative to other measures." I waited 2 days. The email from the mediation center came on a Thursday. "Dear Ms. Perry, we reached out to Angela Perry regarding your request for mediation. She has declined to participate. She stated that there is nothing to mediate and that she does not wish to have contact with you. She refused. She closed the door on the diplomatic solution." 5 minutes later, another notification popped up on the burner account. Angela had posted again. "Some people think they can bully you into silence with threats. Sorry, I don't negotiate with emotional terrorists. If you can't take accountability for your own life, don't expect me to clean up your mess anymore. Boundaries not today." I stared at the screen. Emotional terrorist. She was projecting so hard she was practically a cinema. She was terrified. I could see it now. The escalation, the rapid-fire posts, the refusal to meet. It was all panic. She knew I had found something. She knew the internet was cut. She knew the walls were closing in. I closed the laptop. I walked into my small kitchen and poured a glass of water. I drank it slowly, feeling the cool liquid move down my throat. I was done. I was done hoping she would apologize. I was done hoping she would fix it. I was done trying to protect the fragile ecosystem of a family that had already decided I was the weed. Sarah at the legal aid clinic was right. There was no magic third door. I went back to my desk. I opened a fresh folder on my computer. I named it the case file. I started scanning. I scanned the demand letter I had drafted. I scanned the credit report with the circled inquiries. I scanned the affidavit from the internet provider regarding the IP addresses. I scanned the text messages where she asked for my information. I scanned the screenshots of her Facebook posts, time-stamped and ordered. I scanned the letter from the collection agency. I organized them chronologically. I created a table of contents. I wrote a summary statement at the top, clear and factual, devoid of adjectives. On or about October 12th, Angela Perry used the personal identification information of Eliza Perry to upgrade a service account without authorization. It read like a police report. I wasn't going to argue with her online. I wasn't going to comment on her posts. I wasn't going to text her back. I was going to build a mountain of evidence so high and so solid that when I finally pushed it over, it would bury her lies instantly. She wanted a public fight? She wanted a narrative war? Fine, but I wasn't bringing a status update to a gunfight. I was bringing the law. I picked up my phone and blocked her number. I blocked her on Facebook. I blocked her on Instagram. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't the silence of submission. It was the silence of a soldier cleaning their rifle. I looked at the boxes still stacked in the corner of my room. "I am not a freeloader," I said aloud to the empty room. My voice didn't shake. "I am the bill collector, and I am coming to collect." Stability is a strange sensation when you have spent 2 years bracing for impact. It does not arrive with a fanfare or a sudden burst of joy. It arrives quietly, like the hum of a refrigerator in a room that has been silent for too long. 3 weeks after I moved into the apartment above the bakery, the temp agency called, the insurance firm where I had been quietly processing claims, keeping my head down and avoiding the break room, wanted to bring me on full-time. The offer letter was sitting on my small, second-hand kitchen table. The salary was not a fortune. It was $45,000 a year. In the grand scheme of the American corporate ladder, it was a bottom rung. But to me, reading the fine print under the fluorescent light of my kitchen, it looked like a winning lottery ticket. It meant health insurance. It meant a 401k match. It meant paid sick leave. I signed the paper with a pen that didn't skip. I put it in an envelope. I walked it to the mailbox on the corner. When I came back upstairs, I sat on my couch, a beige thing I had found on a neighborhood marketplace for $50, and just breathed. For the first time in 24 months, my pulse wasn't racing. I didn't have to listen for the sound of Angela's car in the driveway. I didn't have to worry if I had bought the wrong kind of almond milk. I didn't have to calculate if I could afford to put gas in my car and pay my share of a utility bill that wasn't really mine. The silence of the apartment was no longer heavy. It was luxurious. But with the silence came clarity, and clarity is a painful thing. When you are in survival mode, you don't have time to assess the damage. You just keep moving. Now that I had stopped moving, I could look back at the wreckage. I realized how much energy I had spent managing Angela's emotions. I had been a thermostat, constantly adjusting myself to keep her temperature stable. If she was stressed, I made myself small. If she was angry, I made myself useful. If she was sad, I made myself a listener. I had paid $12,000 to live in a house where I wasn't allowed to be a person. The peace lasted exactly 4 days. I came home from work on a Tuesday evening, clutching a bag of takeout, Thai food, bought with my own money, without guilt, to find a cardboard box sitting on my welcome mat. There was no return address. There was no note, but I knew the handwriting on the side in thick black marker. Eliza's junk. My heart hammered against my ribs. She had been here. She knew where I lived. Of course she did. Briar Glen was a small town, and she likely had seen my car or asked around, but the physical intrusion of her presence on my doorstep felt like a violation. I unlocked the door and dragged the box inside. It wasn't heavy. I cut the tape with a kitchen knife. The contents were a masterclass in passive-aggressive storytelling. Angela hadn't just returned my things. She had curated a collection designed to hurt. There was a stack of old self-help books I had bought during my divorce 5 years ago. Broken open. Starting over. The confidence gap. She had placed them right on top. A reminder that I was the family screw-up, the one who always needed fixing. There was a pair of worn-out sneakers I thought I had thrown away. There was a stack of mail that had arrived at her house after I left. Most of it was junk, but she had opened it, all of it. The envelopes were slit across the top, and there were medical statements, old ones. From the surgery that had bankrupted me 2 years ago, the ones that detailed the specific, humiliating nature of the procedure I had undergone, she had kept them. And now she was returning them, crumpled, as if to say, "Here is your trauma, take it back." I dug through the box, my hands shaking. I was looking for something specific. When I lived in the guest room, I had a red plastic accordion folder. It was where I kept my personal documents, my birth certificate, my social security card, and the printed copies of the spreadsheet I had maintained. I had packed it in one of the boxes I left in the garage during the hasty move-out, intending to get it later. I emptied the box onto the floor. The books, the shoes, the open mail. The red folder was not there. I sat back on my heels. Cold dread washed over me. I knew I had left it. I remembered seeing the corner of it sticking out of a box labeled desk stuff that I hadn't been able to fit in the truck on the first trip. She had gone through my boxes. She had found the folder. She had seen the spreadsheet. She knew that I knew. That was why she was escalating. That was why she was refusing mediation. She wasn't just annoyed that her freeloader was gone. She was terrified because her freeloader had receipts. By keeping the folder, she was trying to disarm me. She thought that if she held the physical paper, the truth ceased to exist. She didn't know about the cloud backup. I left the mess on the floor and went to the kitchen to pour a glass of water. My hands were trembling so hard the water sloshed over the rim. My phone rang. It wasn't a text. It was a call from an 800 number. I stared at it. Unknown caller. Usually, I would let it go to voicemail, but the adrenaline was already high. I answered, "Hello, Ms. Perry?" A woman's voice. Professional. Clipped. "Yes, this is the Fraud Prevention Department at First Regional Bank. We are calling to verify a credit application submitted 10 minutes ago in your name." I gripped the edge of the counter. 10 minutes ago. I didn't submit an application. I said, "We suspected as much." The woman said, "You have a fraud alert on your file that requires verbal verification for any new lines of credit. The application was for a platinum rewards card with a $10,000 limit." I closed my eyes. $10,000. "Can you tell me where the application originated?" I asked. "I can't give you a specific location." The woman said, "But it was submitted online." "Ms. Perry," I said, "I need you to document this. I did not apply. This is a case of identity theft. I have reason to believe I know who is doing it. We will mark the application as fraudulent and deny it." She said, "But Ms. Perry, if you know who is doing this, you need to file a police report. We can only stop them at the gate. We can't stop them from knocking." I hung up. I felt a strange cocktail of emotions. Fear. Yes, the nausea was back. But under the fear was a dark, cold vindication. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't ungrateful. My sister, the responsible one, the homeowner, the office manager, the family success story, was sitting in her house right now, trying to open a $10,000 credit line in my name because she was desperate. I sank down onto the floor of my kitchen. I pulled my knees to my chest, and I cried. I didn't cry for the money. I didn't cry for the credit score. I cried for the little girl I used to be. I cried for the dynamic that had been set in stone 30 years ago. Angela was the golden child. She got the good grades. She married the right guy, even if he left. She bought the house. She was the one my mother bragged about at church. I was the mess. I was the one who majored in the wrong thing. I was the one who got sick. I was the one who got laid off. I was the one who needed help. Our entire family system was built on that architecture. Angela needed me to be the failure so she could look benevolent by comparison. And the family rewarded her for it. They applauded her tough love. They liked her posts. They fed her ego because it was easier than asking why the successful sister needed to borrow money from her freeloader sibling. I realized, sitting on that linoleum floor, that Angela didn't hate me. She needed me. She needed my name on her bills. She needed my failure to hide her own. She was consuming me, piece by piece, to keep her own image alive. It was the ultimate betrayal. It wasn't just theft of money, it was theft of self. I wiped my face. I stood up. I was done being the mess. The next morning, I called Sarah at the legal aid clinic. "I am ready to send the letter," I said. We drafted it together. It was a masterpiece of brevity. There were no adjectives. There were no emotional appeals. There was no, "How could you do this to me?" It was 2 pages of facts. "Dear Ms. Perry, this letter serves as a formal demand regarding the unauthorized use of Eliza Perry's personal identification information. We have documented the following accounts opened or modified without authorization. 1. Linkstream Internet and Cable. Account ending in 4552. 2. First Regional Bank Credit Card. Account ending in 9901. 3. Omni Wireless. Account ending in 2234. Demand is hereby made for the immediate payment of all outstanding balances on these accounts, totaling $4,840.12, and the subsequent closure of said accounts. Furthermore, demand is made for the immediate removal of all social media posts containing the image or likeness of Eliza Perry. As these posts are being used to facilitate a false narrative while financial crimes are being committed, if these demands are not met within 7 days, we will proceed with filing a formal police report regarding identity theft and fraud. It was signed by me, but it was on the legal aid clinic's letterhead. I sent it via certified mail. I paid the extra fee for the green return receipt. I wanted her to have to sign for it. I wanted her to hold the paper in her hand. I waited. The green card came back signed 3 days later. 2 hours after the mail was delivered in Briar Glen, the notification on my burner account lit up. I knew it was coming. I had steeled myself for it. But knowing the train is coming doesn't stop the noise from hurting your ears. Angela had posted a photo. It was a picture of my letter. But it was cropped, expertly cropped. She had cut off the list of accounts. She had cut off the dollar amounts. She had cut off the section about identity theft. All that was visible was the letterhead, my signature, and the sentence, "If these demands are not met, we will proceed with filing a formal police report." Her caption was a paragraph of pure, distilled victimhood. I am shaking right now. You take someone in, you feed them, you give them a home for 2 years when nobody else would help them. You ask for nothing but a little gratitude, and this is what you get? My own sister is threatening to sue me. She is threatening to call the police on me because I finally asked her to leave. I am heartbroken. I don't know who this person is anymore. Money really does change people, even when they don't have any. Heartbroken family betrayal unbelievable. The comments section exploded. Oh my God, Angela, I am so sorry. Lawyering up against your own sister? That is low. She is just trying to scare you. Don't let her win. After everything you did for her? This is disgusting. I watched the comments roll in. 10, 20, 50. I felt the urge to vomit again. She was winning. She was taking the evidence of her crime and turning it into evidence of my cruelty. She was gaslighting an entire town. But then, I saw it. A comment from a woman I didn't know. Her name was Jessica. Wait, Jessica wrote, "Why is the middle of the letter cut off?" What exactly is she demanding? It jumps from the header to the threat. What is she asking for? Angela didn't reply to that one. Another comment. This one from a guy named Mark. Yeah. Usually demand letters list specific things. Is she asking for money? Or property? Angela deleted Mark's comment. But she missed one. If she is threatening a police report, that is usually criminal, not civil. A woman named Patty wrote, "What is she saying you did?" Angela? The tide hadn't turned, but the water was getting choppy. People aren't stupid. They know that when someone hides part of a document, the truth is usually in the missing piece. Then came the message. It was to my private inbox, not the burner account. It was from a woman named Rebecca. Rebecca was my second cousin on my father's side. I hadn't seen her since a reunion 10 years ago. She lived in Ohio. Hi, Eliza. The message said, I saw Angela's post. I'm not going to comment on there because I don't want the drama. But I wanted to tell you something. I hesitated. I didn't know if I could handle more advice. Go ahead, I typed. This happened before. Rebecca wrote, years ago, before she was married, she had a roommate in college named Tara. I remember because Angela told the whole family that Tara was stealing from her and never paid rent. It was a huge drama. But then, months later, I heard my dad talking to your dad. He said Angela had run up a huge bill on Tara's department store card and got caught. Your dad paid it off to keep it quiet. He made everyone promise never to talk about it. I stared at the screen. My father knew. He was gone now. He had passed away 5 years ago. But he had known. He had covered for her. He had paid off her fraud to protect the family name, and in doing so, he had taught her that there were no consequences. Thank you for telling me. I typed, I had no idea. I just thought you should know you aren't the first. Rebecca replied. She has a pattern. She gets in over her head. She uses someone close to her to float the boat, and then she destroys them so nobody believes them. Be careful. Eliza. I closed the laptop. She gets in over her head. That was the piece I was missing. Why now? Why was she so desperate? Why the sudden escalation to $10,000 credit cards and freeloader narratives? Angela had a good job. She made decent money. Where was it going? I went into research mode. I couldn't look at her bank accounts, but I could look at public records. Property records in Larkhaven County were online. I searched her address. I found the deed. I found the original mortgage from 10 years ago. And then I found it. 2 years ago, right before I moved in, Angela had taken out a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. I clicked on the document. It wasn't a standard amortization. It was an interest-only loan with a balloon payment due at the 24-month mark. I looked at the date. The 24-month mark was next month. The balloon payment was $40,000. I did the math. She had spent the last 2 years paying only the interest, likely using the money to fund the lifestyle she couldn't afford. The new car. The trips she took for work. The premium cable packages. She had burned through the equity in her house, and now the bill was coming due. She didn't have $40,000. That was why she needed the credit cards in my name. That was why she needed the freeloader story. She was setting the stage to go to our mother, or Aunt Linda, or anyone else, and say, "I am going to lose the house because Eliza drained me dry. Please help." She wasn't just mean. She was drowning, and she was using my body as a raft. The demand letter wasn't going to work. She couldn't pay me back. She didn't have the money. She was insolvent. I sat in my chair as the sun went down, turning the room gray. I had a choice. I could release the uncropped letter. I could post the spreadsheet. I could post the public record of her loan. I could burn her to the ground tonight. The internet would love it. It would be a spectacle. But if I did that, I became just another character in her drama. I became the crazy sister, engaging in a Facebook war. It would be messy. It would be emotional. And it would give her exactly what she wanted, a fight to distract everyone from the facts. No, I needed to be smarter than that. I needed to do this in a way that left no room for interpretation, no room for her side, no room for tears. I needed a controlled detonation. I opened my calendar. Angela's fresh start party, the one she had been hinting at in her posts, the one where she was going to celebrate her liberation, was scheduled for Friday night at the community hall. She was turning it into a fundraiser. I wasn't invited, but the hall was a public venue. I looked at the folder of evidence on my desk. I looked at the demand letter. I looked at the credit report. I wasn't going to go to the party to scream. I wasn't going to flip tables. I was going to let her tell her story. I was going to let her dig the hole as deep as she possibly could, and then I was going to fill it in. I picked up my phone and called Sarah at the legal aid clinic. "Sarah," I said, "the demand letter didn't work. She posted it online. I saw—" Sarah said, "I am sorry. Eliza, do you want to file the police report now?" "Not yet." I said, "I need one more thing." "What?" "I need you to help me draft a statement. Not for her. For everyone else. I am going to release the truth. But I want it to be bulletproof." I hung up the phone. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. I felt a strange sense of calm. The grief was still there. The grief for the sister I wished I had. The father who should have stopped this. The mother who wouldn't listen. But the shame was gone. I wasn't the freeloader. I was the financier. I was the scapegoat. And the scapegoat was about to speak. The difference between revenge and justice is often just a matter of paperwork. Revenge is messy. It is slashed tires and screaming matches in the front yard. Justice is a file folder, 3 inches thick, organized by date, with every lie cross-referenced against a bank statement. I spent the next 3 days turning my kitchen table into a war room. I didn't buy a gun. I bought a laminator. I printed out the timeline of Angela's texts asking me for money. I printed the corresponding Venmo receipts. I printed the credit report showing the unauthorized inquiries. I printed the utility usage graphs for the storage garage. I laid them out like a mosaic of my own exploitation. My goal wasn't to destroy Angela. I still loved her, in that deep, painful way you love the person who shares your DNA, even when they are poisoning you. I just wanted to stop the machine. I wanted to jam a wrench into the gears of the narrative she was building before it crushed me completely. The first step was digital hygiene. I went to the Facebook post, the one with the photo of my suitcases, the one that had become the town square for my public shaming. I didn't comment on it. I didn't engage with the trolls. I clicked the 3 little dots in the corner. Report photo. I selected violation of privacy. This photo was taken without my consent and is being used to harass me. It was a toss-up. Social media platforms are notoriously indifferent to family squabbles. but I had a feeling the algorithm might flag the sheer volume of vitriol in the comments. 12 hours later, I got a notification. We have removed the content you reported. The photo vanished. The comments vanished. The freeloader thread that had been festering for weeks was suddenly scrubbed from the internet. I waited. The explosion took exactly 40 minutes. My phone started buzzing. But not with a call from Angela. She knew I had blocked her number. It was a notification from my burner account. Angela had gone live. I opened the laptop and watched. She was sitting in her car. The lighting unflattering. Her eyes puffy. She looked manic. They are trying to silence me. She told the camera, her voice trembling with manufactured rage. I share my truth. My painful journey of setting boundaries with a toxic family member. And what happens? I get reported. I get censored. This is what happens when you stand up to abusers. They try to erase your story. She wiped a tear that wasn't there. But I won't be silenced, she continued. In fact, this just shows me that I need to speak louder. I am going to hold space for this trauma. I am inviting everyone who has supported me to a gathering this Friday at the Briar Glen Community Hall. A fresh start evening. We are going to talk about healing from financial abuse. We are going to talk about how to survive when family betrays you. I stared at the screen. Financial abuse. She was using the very term she was inflicting on me. It was a mirror trick. She was projecting her own crimes onto her victims so loudly that nobody would believe me if I used the same words. Then came the kicker. There will be a small cover charge, she said, looking down at her hands modestly, and a donation basket, because, as you know, I was left with a lot of unexpected bills when certain people left, and I need to secure my home. I won't let her take that from me, too. She was monetizing the lie. She was crowdsourcing the balloon payment for her home equity loan, and she was doing it by selling tickets to my execution. I closed the laptop. My hands were cold. I had a therapy appointment the next morning. I sat on the beige couch in Dr. Evans' office and told her everything. The demand letter, the cropped screenshot, the upcoming Fresh Start fundraiser. You don't have to go, Doctor, Evans said gently. She adjusted her glasses. Eliza, you have escaped the house. You have a new job. You are building a new life. Walking into that room is inviting trauma back in. You have the right to choose peace. I looked at the ficus tree in the corner. I know, I said. I know I have the right to stay home. But if I don't go, I won't know what she says. Does it matter what she says? Doctor, Evans asked. It matters if she crosses the line from insults to crimes. I said, it matters if she lies about the numbers. If I am not there to witness it, and she convinces 50 people that I stole $10,000 from her, that becomes the truth. It becomes the town's history. I can't fight a ghost. Doctor, Evans, I need to fight a recording. I left the office with a knot in my stomach, but my mind was made up. I called Marcus. He was the guy from the temp agency who had helped me move. He was big, quiet, and had seen Angela screaming at the back of my head on move-out day. He knew the vibe, Marcus. I said, I need a favor, a weird one. I told him the plan. Friday night was rainy. It was perfect weather for a pity party. The Briar Glen Community Hall was a brick building that usually hosted Boy Scout meetings and pancake breakfasts. Tonight, it was decorated with string lights and balloons in soft pastel colors. A sign out front, hand-painted on foam core. Read, Surviving Thriving, a fresh start with Angela. I parked my car 2 blocks away. Marcus met me at the corner. He wore a dark hoodie and looked ready to bounce a nightclub. We are just observing. I reminded him, no scenes, no yelling. We stand in the back. We record. We leave. Got it, Marcus said. I wore a baseball cap and a scarf wrapped high around my chin. I wasn't trying to be invisible, but I didn't want to be the center of attention before the show started. We paid the $10 cover charge at the door. The woman taking the money was one of Angela's friends from the gym. She didn't recognize me in the dim light. We walked in. There were about 40 people there, mostly women, mostly neighbors and friends of friends. There was a table with cheap wine and cheese cubes. And right in the center, next to the stage, was a large glass vase with a sign taped to it. Legal Defense Recovery Fund. It was already a quarter full of cash and envelopes. My stomach turned over. Legal defense. She was raising money to defend herself against the lawsuit she knew I hadn't filed yet. I scanned the room. I saw Mrs. Higgins, the neighbor who had commented on the Facebook post. I saw my cousin Beth. I saw people I had gone to high school with. They were drinking wine and nodding sympathetically as Angela circulated the room. She looked stunning. She was wearing a white dress, simple and modest, like a penitent angel. She was clutching people's hands, looking deep into their eyes, performing the role of the survivor with Oscar-worthy commitment. Marcus and I found a spot in the back corner, near the fire exit. I pulled my phone out and started the voice memo app. I held it low against my chest. 10 minutes later, Angela took the stage. The room went quiet. She adjusted the microphone. She looked out at the crowd, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Thank you all for coming," she whispered. The microphone whined slightly. She took a deep breath. "It is so hard to speak up against family." She began. "We are taught to protect them. We are taught to keep secrets. But silence is what allows the abuse to continue." I felt the bile rise in my throat. She was stealing my lines. She was stealing my reality. She talked for 20 minutes. It was a masterfully vague speech at first. She talked about toxic takers and energy vampires. She talked about the exhaustion of supporting someone who refuses to grow up. But then, she needed to close the deal. She needed the donations. And to get the money, she needed to raise the stakes. I welcomed my sister into my home. She said, her voice gaining strength. I gave her a sanctuary, and in return, she didn't just drain my emotional reserves. She drained my bank account. A gasp went through the room. I stood frozen. This was it. I woke up to find accounts in my name that I didn't open. She lied. She looked straight at the camera phone someone in the front row was holding. She used my information. She stole from me. She left me with thousands of dollars in bills for things I never bought. And when I confronted her, she threatened to sue me. She threatened to ruin my reputation if I told the truth. My hand gripped Marcus's arm so hard, my nails dug into his jacket. She was flipping the chessboard. She was accusing me of the exact crime she had committed. She was confessing. But she was changing the pronouns. "She stole from me," Angela said, a tear finally tracking down her cheek. "And now I am at risk of losing my home because of the debt she left behind. That is why I asked you here tonight, not just for support, but to help me save the sanctuary I tried to share with her." The room erupted in applause. People were reaching for their wallets. I felt a vibration in my pocket. My phone was still recording. That was it. That was the line. She stole from me. That wasn't an opinion. That wasn't tough love. That was a statement of fact that could be proven false. That was defamation per se. She had just accused me of a felony in front of 40 witnesses and used that accusation to solicit money. I wanted to run onto the stage. I wanted to grab the microphone and scream. Check the IP addresses. Check the signatures. But I looked at the faces in the crowd. They were rapt. They were crying. They loved her. If I interrupted now, I would look like the unhinged villain she had just described. I would be the toxic sister crashing the healing party. I looked at Marcus. "Let's go," I whispered. We walked out. Nobody noticed us leaving. The applause was too loud. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, just breathing. The rain drummed against the roof. I played back the recording. The audio was crisp. She used my information. She stole from me. I had it. I didn't drive home. I drove to the 24-hour copy shop. I printed out a new document. Then I went home and sat at my computer. I composed an email. I sent it to Angela's personal email address, her work email address, and just to be sure, I sent a text to her phone from a web-based service so it wouldn't be blocked. Subject: Final offer of resolution. Angela, I attended your event tonight. I have a recording of your speech where you explicitly accused me of identity theft and larceny in front of a public audience to solicit funds. This is defamation. It is also fraud. I have the IP addresses from the internet provider showing the accounts were opened from your home. I have the credit report showing the inquiries made while I was living there. I have the witness statements. I am offering you one final chance to handle this privately. 1. You will sign a repayment agreement for the $4,840 charged to my name. 2. You will provide a full accounting of any other accounts you opened using my Social Security number. 3. You will sign a mutual non-disparagement agreement. 4. You will issue a public retraction of the statement that I stole from you. You have 24 hours to agree to mediation. If I do not hear from you by 5 p.m. tomorrow, I will proceed with the police report and a civil suit for defamation. Eliza. I hit send. I stared at the screen. My hands were steady now. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, mechanical necessity. The reply came at 2 a.m. It wasn't an email. It was a text to my actual phone number. She must have unblocked me just to send it. Go ahead. Say anything. I will tell everyone what you are really like. I will tell them about the abortion. I will tell them about the time you got fired for incompetence. I will tell them everything. You think you have evidence? I have a lifetime of dirt on you. Try me. I read the text. The abortion she mentioned was a miscarriage I had suffered alone 3 years ago. I had told only her. I had cried in her arms. The firing was the layoff that 50 other people had gone through. She was willing to weaponize my grief. She was willing to take the most painful moments of my life and parade them in front of the town just to protect her credit score. I realized then that there was no bottom. There was no line she wouldn't cross. I didn't reply. Monday morning, I walked into my new office building. I felt brittle, like glass that was about to shatter. I went straight to the HR director's office. Her name was Linda. She was a stern woman with a bob cut. I knocked on the door. Ms. Perry? She asked. Everything okay? I need to speak with you about a personal matter that might impact the workplace. I said. I sat down. I laid a folder on her desk. I am currently the victim of identity theft and targeted harassment by a family member. I said. My voice was calm, professional. Linda's eyebrows shot up. I am handling it through legal channels. I continued. But this person has threatened to contact my employer and spread false rumors about my professional history and personal life to discredit me. I wanted to get ahead of it. Here is the documentation of the fraud alerts and the cease and desist demand. I handed her the papers. It was humiliating. I was new. I wanted to be the low-maintenance employee. I wanted to be invisible. Instead, I was bringing drama into the office in my first month. Linda looked through the papers. She paused at the copy of the text message threatening to expose my medical history. She looked up at me. Her expression softened. Eliza, she said, thank you for bringing this to us. If she contacts the company, we will direct her to legal. It won't affect your standing here. We judge you on your work, not your family's drama. I exhaled. A weight I didn't know I was carrying dropped from my shoulders. Is there anything else? Linda asked. No, I said. I just wanted you to know. I went back to my desk. I opened my email. It was 4:55 p.m., 5 minutes until the deadline I had given Angela. I watched the clock on my computer screen. 4:56. 4:57. I wondered if she would cave. I wondered if the threat of the police report would finally break through her narcissism. I wondered if she loved me enough to stop. 4:58. 4:59. 500. No email, no text, no call. She was calling my bluff. She thought I was still the little sister who would swallow the poison to keep the family dinner pleasant. She thought I was still the prop. She was wrong. I picked up the heavy folder, the one containing the timeline, the bank statements, the affidavit from the internet company, the recording of the speech, and the screenshot of her threat. I put it in my bag. I stood up and put on my coat. Where are you going? My coworker asked. I have an errand to run. I said. I walked out of the building and got into my car. I didn't drive home. I drove to the Briar Glen police station. I sat in the parking lot for a moment, looking at the brick building. It looked serious. It looked final. Once I walked through those doors, I couldn't unring the bell. I would be criminalizing my sister. I would be destroying the last remnant of my family. My mother would never forgive me. The aunts and cousins would hate me. But then I thought about the fresh start party. I thought about the donations jar. I thought about the text. I will tell them about the abortion. She wasn't just mean. She was dangerous. She was actively hunting me. She was endangering my financial future, my career, and my sanity. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it for survival. I opened the car door. I grabbed the folder. I walked up the steps, pushed open the heavy glass door, and walked up to the sergeant at the front desk. "Can I help you?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I need to file a report." "What kind of report?" I placed the folder on the counter. It landed with a heavy, solid thud. "Identity theft, fraud, and extortion." I said. The sergeant opened the folder. He looked at the first page. He looked at me. "This is a lot of documentation," he said. "I have been keeping records." I said. He nodded. "Have a seat. Ms. Perry, a detective will be with you shortly." I sat on the hard wooden bench. I watched the clock on the wall ticking. It was done. The silence was over. The war had officially begun. Sitting on the hard wooden bench of the Briar Glen police station, I realized that the scariest part of adulthood is not the paying of bills or the loss of love, but the realization that nobody is coming to save you. You have to save yourself. And sometimes, saving yourself looks like handing a 3-inch binder of evidence to a detective named Miller who smells like stale coffee and indifference. I didn't cry. I didn't tell Detective Miller about how Angela used to braid my hair or how she held my hand at our father's funeral. I didn't tell him about the freeloader post or the humiliation of the fundraising party. I kept it narrow. I kept it cold. "Officer," I said, sliding the binder across the gray laminate desk, "I am reporting multiple instances of identity theft, unauthorized credit applications, and wire fraud committed against me." Detective Miller opened the binder. He flipped past the table of contents I had meticulously created. He looked at the credit report with the circled inquiries. He looked at the affidavit from the internet provider linking the IP address to Angela's home. He looked at the transcription of her speech where she admitted to the debt, but reversed the victim. "Who is the suspect?" he asked, reaching for his pen. "Angela Perry." I said. "My sister." He paused. The pen hovered over the paper. He looked up at me, his eyes tired. "You know that once this starts, Ms. Perry, it is out of your hands. The district attorney picks it up. You can't just call us next week and say you made up and want to drop it. This becomes a criminal investigation." "I know." I said. My voice was steady. "Surprising even me. I'm not asking for a family intervention. I am reporting a crime." He nodded slowly. Then he started writing. Walking out of the station into the cool night air, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was gravity. I had just dropped a stone into a lake, and I knew the ripples were going to be violent. The first ripple hit 3 days later. I was at work, training on the new claims software. When my phone buzzed with a call from my mother, I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, it buzzed again. Then a text. "Call me, now." I took my break early and went out to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and stared at the phone. I knew what was happening. The investigation had begun. The banks had been notified. The fraud alerts were triggering inquiries. Angela had likely received a call from a detective, or perhaps her bank accounts had been frozen pending investigation. I called my mother back. "Eliza," she breathed. Her voice was high and tight, bordering on hysteria. "What have you done?" I filed a police report. "Mom," I said, "I told you I would. Angela just called me." My mother said, "She is sobbing. She says the police called her work. She says you are trying to get her arrested." "Eliza, she is your sister. You can't do this. You are taking this too far. It is extreme." "It is not extreme." I said, "It is the law. She stole $5,000 from me." "Mom, she opened credit cards in my name. She tried to open a $10,000 line of credit last week. She is dangerous. She is desperate, my mother shouted. She is drowning. Eliza, she made mistakes because she was scared about the house. She didn't mean to hurt you. She would have paid it back. She didn't try to pay it back. I said, she tried to destroy my reputation so nobody would believe me when I found out. She held a fundraiser. Mom, she stood on a stage and told 40 people I was a thief to cover her tracks. Did she tell you that part? My mother went silent for a moment. But I don't believe that, she said weakly. That doesn't sound like Angela. You must have misunderstood. I closed my eyes. The denial was a fortress. I didn't misunderstand. I said, I have a recording. Eliza, please, my mother pleaded. Switching tactics. Just drop the report. We can fix this. I will talk to her. We can work out a payment plan. Don't give her a criminal record. Think about her job. Think about the family name. I thought about the family name. I thought about how the name Perry had been dragged through the mud on Facebook for weeks. Attached to the word freeloader. I thought about how nobody had cared about the family name when it was my reputation being incinerated. I am sorry, Mom, I said, but I am not doing this to hurt her. I am doing this to protect myself. If I don't report it, the debt is mine. I can't afford to pay for her life. I hung up. Then I blocked my mother's number for 24 hours. I needed silence to survive the next wave. The second ripple hit the public square. Angela, sensing the walls closing in, tried one last desperate spin. She posted on Facebook again, this time. There was no photo of me. No cropped letter. Just a black screen with white text. I am being silenced. My abuser has decided to weaponize the legal system against me because I dared to speak my truth. I am scared. I am alone. Please pray for me as I face this injustice. It was a classic move. Darvo. Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. But something had changed. The audience was fatigued. The plot holes were becoming too large to ignore. I watched from my burner account as the comments rolled in. There were still the die-hard supporters, the ones who fed on drama like sharks on chum. We are with you, Angela. Stay strong. But then, I saw a comment from Mrs. Gable, the neighbor who had messaged me privately. Angela. Mrs. Gable wrote, if this is about Eliza, you should know that many of us saw her working around your house for 2 years, and the abuser you are talking about is the quiet girl who walked your dog every day. This is getting hard to believe. It was a polite, devastating blow, then a shocking retraction. It came from the local realtor who had originally commented, "Tough love is the best love" on the first post. I am deleting my previous comments, the realtor wrote. I heard from a mutual friend that there is a police investigation involving identity theft. I think we all jumped to conclusions here without knowing the facts. I am stepping away from this. The sisters' social armor didn't shatter. It eroded. It was the death of 1,000 doubts. People started to wonder why the freeloader had the money for a lawyer. They started to wonder why Angela was raising money for legal defense if she was the victim. They started to wonder why the story kept changing. The fundraiser, the Fresh Start event, became a topic of hushed gossip. Did you hear she accused Eliza of stealing? But now the police are investigating Angela? The narrative machine was jamming. 2 weeks later, the mail brought the first victory. It was a letter from Linkstream, the internet provider. Dear Ms. Perry, following our internal investigation and the receipt of your police report, Case 44902, we have determined that the account charges in question were fraudulent. The outstanding balance of $640 has been removed from your liability, and the account has been closed. We have reported this finding to the credit bureaus. I held the letter against my chest. $640. It wasn't a fortune, but it was proof. A multi-billion-dollar corporation had looked at the evidence and agreed. I was not the one who did this. Then came the letter from First Regional Bank. Account closed due to fraud. Debt forgiven. I wasn't whole yet. There were still legal fees, the emotional toll, and the thousands of dollars in cash I had spent on groceries that I would never see again. But the bleeding had stopped. The momentum had shifted from shame to repair. That weekend, my mother showed up at my apartment. She didn't call first. She just knocked. I opened the door to see her standing in the hallway, clutching her purse with both hands. She looked older than she had a month ago. Her face was drawn, her eyes anxious. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped back. She walked into my small, quiet sanctuary. She looked around at the second-hand furniture, the clean counters, the lack of clutter. It was a stark contrast to Angela's chaotic, overfilled house. "Eliza," she said, "we need to talk. Privately." I sat at the kitchen table. I didn't offer her tea. "Okay," I said. "Angela is a mess," my mother said, sitting opposite me. "The bank froze her main account. The detective interviewed her yesterday. She is terrified. Eliza, she could lose her job. She could lose the house." I looked at my mother. For 33 years, I had sought this woman's approval. I had tried to be the good girl, the helper, the peacekeeper. I had swallowed my own needs to keep her anxiety at bay. But as I looked at her now, defending the predator because the predator was louder than the prey, the cord snapped. "Mom," I said, "I am going to ask you one question, and if you answer it with anything other than a fact, I am going to ask you to leave." She blinked, startled by my tone. "Did Angela steal my identity?" I asked. My mother sighed, looking at her hands. She borrowed your name. She intended to fix it. Did she do it without my consent?" I asked. "Eliza, family is complicated. Did she do it without my consent?" I repeated. My voice didn't rise. It just got harder. "Yes," my mother whispered. "Then she committed a crime," I said, "and I'm not responsible for the consequences of her crime. I am the victim. Mom, not her, and the fact that you are here, in my home, asking me to save her from the mess she made, tells me everything I need to know about where I stand in this family. Eliza, that is not fair," she protested. "It is the truth." I said, "I am done debating my worth with you. I am done trying to prove I am not a freeloader. The police report stands. The investigation proceeds. If she wanted mercy, she should have thought about that before she tried to destroy me." My mother stood up. She looked angry now. "You have become so cold." I stood up too. "No, Mom, I have become an adult." She left. The door clicked shut. I locked it, and for the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel lonely, it felt safe. 3 days later, Angela reached out. She didn't text. She didn't post. She sent a message through a lawyer she had apparently hired, or perhaps a friend who was pretending to be one. It was a request for a settlement meeting. I agreed, on one condition. We meet at the library, in a private study room, with a mediator present. I walked into the library on a rainy Tuesday. The room smelled of old paper and carpet cleaner. Angela was already there. She looked small. That was the first thing I noticed. Without the stage lighting, without the Facebook filters, without the echo chamber of her comment section. She was just a tired, middle-aged woman in a frantic state. Her roots were showing. Her hands were shaking. She didn't look at me when I sat down. "Eliza," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. I laid my hands on the table. "I am listening. This has gotten out of hand," she said. "The police. Eliza, they are talking about felony fraud. They are talking about grand larceny. You should have thought about that before you filed the application for the $10,000 card." I said, "I was going to pay it back," she snapped, a flash of the old Angela breaking through. "The loan was coming due. The balloon payment. I just needed to bridge the gap until my bonus came in. I wasn't stealing from you. I was borrowing credit. You didn't ask," I said, "and when I left, you tried to ruin me. You called me a freeloader. You accused me of theft." She looked down. I was panicked. I needed people to not look at my finances. If they thought you were the problem, they wouldn't ask why I was broke. It was an admission. Finally, it wasn't an apology, but it was the truth. She had used me as a human shield. I took a piece of paper out of my bag. "I have prepared a framework." I said, "This is the only way I drop the civil suit. The criminal investigation is out of my hands, but I can tell the district attorney that we have reached a restitution agreement. That might help you with sentencing. She grabbed the paper. She read it. 1. Full repayment of the $4,800, plus legal fees. 2. A written, notarized admission that Eliza Perry paid rent and utilities and was not a freeloader. 3. Immediate removal of all social media posts regarding Eliza Perry. 4. A public retraction of the theft accusation made at the fundraising event. Angela read it. Her face went pale. I can't do number 4. She said, Excuse me? I asked. I can pay the money, she said rapidly. I can get a loan from Mom. I will pay you back every cent. I will take the posts down, but I can't post a retraction. I can't tell everyone I lied. Why not? I asked. Because I have to live here, she hissed. My friends, the neighbors, they all donated. If I tell them I made it up, I will be a pariah. I will lose everything. You want to pay me privately, but keep the lie publicly. I said, You want to keep your reputation at the expense of mine. I will pay you extra, she offered. I will give you $5,000. Just let me keep the story. Let me say we resolved a misunderstanding. Don't make me admit I lied. I looked at her. She still didn't get it. She thought this was about money. She thought my dignity had a price tag. She was willing to buy her way out of the guilt, but she wasn't willing to let go of the power. She needed to be the hero of her own story, even if it meant I had to remain the villain. I took the paper back from her. No, I said, Eliza, please, she begged. She reached across the table. I can't be humiliated like that. It will destroy me. You tried to destroy me, I said, and you didn't care. I stood up. The deal is off. Angela. I walked out of the library. She was calling my name, loud enough for the librarians to shush her. I kept walking. I drove home in a daze. I sat at my computer. The screen was glowing in the twilight. I had prepared a statement. It was the nuclear option. It was a PDF document containing everything. The spreadsheet, the text messages, the credit report, the recording of her speech, the letter from the internet provider. I had written a caption. For 2 years, I was called a freeloader. For the last month, I was called a thief. Here's the truth, supported by bank records, police reports, and recorded confessions. My sister, Angela Perry, stole my identity to fund a lifestyle she could not afford, and then orchestrated a harassment campaign to cover her tracks. It was perfect. It was factual. It was devastating. I hovered my mouse over the post button. I could do it. I could hit enter. Within an hour, it would be everywhere. The neighbors would see it. Her boss would see it. The donors would see it. She would be ruined. Socially, professionally, completely. It would be the ultimate revenge. The truth. Weaponized. My finger rested on the mouse. I thought about the satisfaction of watching her house of cards fall. I thought about the vindication, but then I looked at the room around me. My quiet apartment, my new job, my clean slate. If I posted this, I wasn't just destroying her, I was chaining myself to her. If I posted this, I became the other half of the messy Perry sisters. I became the woman who aired her family laundry on the internet. I would spend the next year fighting in the comments, answering questions, reliving the trauma for an audience of strangers. I would be proving her right, that our lives were a performance for public consumption. The police had the evidence, the bank had the evidence, the court would handle the rest. I didn't need the town of Briar Glen to validate my reality. I validated it. Angela wanted a war for the audience. I had already won the war for the truth. I moved the mouse. I clicked delete. I watched the draft vanish. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked to the window. The rain had stopped. The streetlights were reflecting on the wet pavement. I picked up my phone. I went to my contacts. I found Angela. I didn't send a text. I didn't send a curse. I scrolled to the bottom and hit block caller. Then I deleted the contact entirely. Her number was gone. Her name was gone. I was alone in my apartment. I had less money than I should have. I had a family that was fractured beyond repair. I had scars that would take years to fade. But as I looked out at the quiet street, I realized something profound. The freeloader was gone, and for the first time in my life, I was free. Thank you so much for listening to Eliza's story. It was a journey of frustration, betrayal, and ultimately, a quiet but powerful liberation. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with a family member to protect your own peace? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice, resilience, and the complicated human drama of revenge, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. Your support helps us bring these narratives to life. Until next time, protect your peace and keep your receipts.